and hopefully bring a little bit of clarity to the book of Revelation. If you haven't read it, I'd encourage you probably not to start reading the Bible at the book of Revelation. It's quite a tough one. It's quite difficult. But I definitely would say if you've been a believer for a while, it's worth going into. It's worth reading through. It's even worth watching some good preachers speak about it as well. There's a lot in there. And so I'm going to tackle that first topic, the book of Revelation, just a tiny bit of structure around it. It was written by John. A few weeks ago, we finished a series called 1 John, and it was obviously written by John as well. He wrote 5 books that are in our Bible. He wrote the Gospel of John, 1 John, 2 John, 3 John, and Revelation. So this was the last thing he wrote. At the time of writing, he was probably... he was an old guy. He was dictating it, or maybe he was still able to write. I'm not sure. But he was on the Isle of Patmos, which is where Rome would exile people to who didn't follow exactly what they wanted them to follow. Okay, if you were, and he was preaching Jesus as Lord, and that wasn't going down so well. But instead of killing him, he got off lucky, and he was exiled. So he was sent to another island, kind of like the Australia of back then. Okay, where all the naughties went and were shipped off to. Well, that's where he was, and he was busy, and he wrote this revelation. He got this revelation from God, and all throughout the revelation, in fact, multiple times, God says, "Make sure you write this down. Make sure you write this down." Now, I don't know how that works. I don't know if he was in and out of that sort of revelation state of mind. I'm not quite sure. But however it worked, he came out of that revelation and he wrote down everything that he saw. I'm fairly sure that not even he understood everything that he was seeing and experiencing. It was incredible, wonderful, terrifying, horrible, awesome, scary stuff. And that's what you read about in the book of Revelation. Difficult things. But he was told to write it down, and he did that. And I personally have read Revelation many, many times, and it's a tough book. It's really like a huge, confusing puzzle. And I think this has got to do with the topic that was sent in. How do you put that puzzle together? It's full of signs and full of symbols and full of images. It's got lampstands and a prostitute and a beast and horses and a dragon. You're like, how does this all fit into the Bible? It feels like I'm reading, I don't know what, the Hunger Games or Maze Runner, some like post-apocalyptic, hectic literature, and it's hard to work out how that fits into life as we know it. One thing I want to mention about the structure or the book of Revelation, it's not, let me repeat, it's not a secret predictive code about the timing of the end of the world. There are so many books that have been written about if you just take this and add this and take this and multiply this and check the generations of this, you'll find that it leads to exactly this. Whatever, okay. It's not. That's not what it was designed to be. But there is a helpful structure to the book of Revelation that will help you to know where the natural sort of sections of the book are. And so if you're planning on reading it, I hope this is helpful for you. There's just 22 chapters, so it's not super long, but it's divided like this. Chapters 1 to 3. It's John's greeting. So he's giving himself credibility. Hey, this is John. I'm writing this to you for this reason. So it's John's greeting, and then Jesus's letters to the 7 churches. If you have been around in church a while, you know these letters, and he sort of encourages some churches and criticizes others, and there's warning there and blessing there. And it was to 7 literal, physical Christian churches in that century, in the first century that he was writing to. But the warnings and the encouragements of those 7 letters stretched on and has helped many churches since then, and will continue to. So that's Jesus' letters to the 7 churches. Then chapters 4 and 5, John is taken into heaven and sees God on the throne and Jesus as a sacrificed lamb. Okay? And together they are worshipped as the one true creator and redeemer. So that's just chapters 4 and 5. Chapters 6 to 19. This is a huge chunk of the book. It's the bulk of the book, really. And it's the scary, difficult, confusing, kind of part of the book. Okay? And so this is what will happen during what is known as, or what is called, the Great Tribulation. It's not a word we use often, but the great suffering would be another way to put it. So this is a really dark and difficult time that John is writing about, and what he's seeing is unbelievable. I mean, it's incredible stuff. And one of the things is he sees 3 sets of 7 judgments, 7 seals, 7 trumpets, and 7 bowls. And all 21 things are bad news, okay? There's no good news really happening in this part of Revelation. It's tough. It's about utter darkness, famine, death, war, people being killed for their faith, until in the end, the Antichrist and the false prophet are destroyed. You still with me? That's the structure. And then the last 3 chapters of the book, chapters 20 to 22, Satan is bound, and Jesus rules the earth with his people for 1,000 years of peace. And at the end of that time, Satan is destroyed. And that'll be the complete end of him forever. Then John sees God on his throne descend to the earth for the final judgment of all people. And then we hear the wonderful news. There will be a new heaven and a new earth, and that God himself will live with us. That's the book of Revelation in a little nutshell.